Last year, budget airlines carried more than 50 million passengers to and from the UK. But 30 years ago, things were very different.
Air travel was actually out of reach for an awful lot of people because it was so expensive, and it was something that was seen as, you know, incredibly luxurious.
While well-heeled passengers were being pampered by the likes of British Airways, Pan Am and United Airlines, the rest of us could only dream of joining the jet set. Until Freddie Laker revolutionised the skies with Britain's first no-frills airline.
Are you ready for Freddie?
Freddie Laker came in with a sort of breath of fresh air. The quality on board his planes was not great, but the fares were 1/3 of the price.
These people were going for something like £60 from memory. All right, obviously that's some years ago, but what a price.
Freddie Laker's SkyTrain service was launched in autumn 1977. It had just one route from Gatwick to New York, and there were no advance bookings. Passengers had to queue up at the airport for their tickets.
There's still another 14.5 hours before takeoff, but already he must have at least half a plane load here by my reckoning. In fact, it looks rather like a refugee camp.
Everybody was there, every Fleet Street photographer, every transport correspondent, because he had done something absolutely amazing. He had opened up America for the ordinary British man and woman.
Welcome. Number one. Number one on SkyTrain.
His cheap tickets quickly made the soon-to-be Sir Freddie Laker one of the first celebrity businessmen, with fans from every walk of life.
Just as it's thanks to Freddie Laker that you can cross the Atlantic for so much less than it would have cost you in the early 1970s. Competition works.
He was a great businessman, undoubtedly, but he was also a great showman, and you put those two things together, and that's why he was successful.
He was larger than life. I think everyone can remember those photographs of him holding his hands out in front of his DC-10s.
SkyTrain turned a profit in its first year, so Freddie immediately placed orders for more DC-10 planes and added new services to California and Florida.
How nice. You're the first SkyTrain passenger London to Los Angeles. Welcome to Laker.
As Sir Freddie's airline grew, so did his confidence. But not everyone was impressed.
There is no doubt there was an irritation felt by the more senior people within British Airways. Freddie Laker was coming in as a human being, putting his name on aircraft, things that hadn't been done before. That was the annoyance.
He knew how to pull the tail of British Airways and get on the front pages and rather than the back pages.
Have a good trip, won't you?
SkyTrain had launched well, it was operating successfully, but Sir Freddie didn't want to stop there. What he could see were opportunities for new routes and new destinations to build a global no-frills airline. But it was that sky-high ambition which was to take his business into turbulence.
He was looking to expand in Europe and to Hong Kong and Australia. Well, I think he was probably looking to take over the world, actually.
Laker Airways doubled in size in just 5 years, adding more planes and carrying more than 2 million passengers. This put him on a collision course with his competitors.
When Freddie Laker started to purchase more aircraft and had plans to expand, that changed the whole dynamics. That is why they thought, well, we better see him off before he gets too big.
The major airlines are fighting back by virtually matching Laker fares. British Airways reported brisk business for their tickets to New York. Only £5 more than Laker, with meals at no extra charge.
The big airlines can undercut you, and they can subsidise undercutting you through their business class cabins.
Laker was already fighting an uphill battle, and matters were made worse by a spate of terrifying accidents involving the model of plane used by SkyTrain.
Last Friday's DC-10 air crash at O'Hare Airport in Chicago, in which 273 people were killed, was the worst in American aviation history.
Although none of Laker's planes was involved, customers were scared.
That was extremely serious. People were saying, well, I'm not really sure about the DC-10. I'd pick a jumbo any day.
There's no way this is the end of Laker.
Oh, absolutely no way at all. Of course not.
But as the new decade arrived and recession hit Britain, SkyTrain looked dangerously overstretched.
The figures started to decline in 1981, and at the same time, the value of the pound against the dollar tumbled. And, you know, if you're paying out in dollars and receiving money in pounds, it doesn't take long before the imbalance becomes a problem.
The worsening exchange rate, rising oil prices, meant that Laker faced spiralling costs at the same time as revenues were falling. And being an airline built on low fares made it particularly hard to raise prices to make up the difference. Sir Freddy had been ploughing most of SkyTrain's cash into the airline's expansion, which meant it had very little left in reserve.
Running a business is always a balance between, in a sense, leaving money that you're not using, which is a waste of a resource, and actually running so tightly to the edge that if you have an unlucky event or, you know, you just have a bad trading period, the world collapses on you.
It became public knowledge that Laker Airways was negotiating with its lenders. And the major airlines of the world, particularly US and European airlines, saw this as an opportunity to try and kill off Laker once and for all.
Laker's competitors cut their ticket prices on all of Sir Freddy's routes. In February 1982, the airline's bank manager called in its multi-million-pound overdraft.
He said, well, it's too late to close you down today, but unless we have at least 5 million by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, and another 5 million by the end of the week, then we're going to call in the facility.
The thing that is, in a sense, the blood of the business, the thing that keeps it alive is cash. If you run out of cash, you die.
And just after 9 o'clock this morning, Laker Airways, the pioneer of cut-price fares, announced that it had asked the Clydesdale Bank to appoint a receiver and manager.
We turned on the radio and heard the news, and I have to say, you know, I broke down in tears at that point. It was a very emotional day.
Sir Freddy's dreams were shattered, and so were those of his staff and passengers.
I thought that my job was quite safe.
This must have been one of the saddest days you had with Lakers.
No, I don't feel very happy, no.
We've looked forward to this holiday for so many weeks now. We booked it months and months ago. And you know, you tell the children it's coming, and then it comes, and then all of a sudden you just can't take them. I just don't know.
Many SkyTrain customers refused to believe it was the end for Laker.
The extraordinary thing was that a fund was set up shortly after the collapse to try and find the money to re-establish him. And you know, people put their sixpences in and their shillings, and it was quite extraordinary, the reaction.
I remember him looking at this pile of envelopes saying, it's never enough, and it's all had to be sent back.
Laker Airways collapsed with debts of £270 million. At the time, the biggest corporate failure in British history. Sir Freddy blamed his airline's demise on so-called dirty tricks by his rivals.
The playing field was tilted completely against Sir Freddie Laker, and his competitors, they just went to extraordinary lengths to drive him out of business, and they succeeded in doing so.
But although his rivals may have helped push him over the edge, Laker wasn't entirely blameless.
He hadn't planned properly to deal with the crisis in the oil price or dollar. He got borrowings which had to be repaid on demand. Demand was made money.
It was as though he suddenly began to believe his own publicity, which is always a dangerous thing to do, but he didn't have all the answers. He just thought he did.
Never drive, would you?
Freddie Laker had not surrounded himself with the appropriate skills to run a major expanding business. They were all sort of what one might call yes men, and people of Freddie's type do tend to try and find people who just go along with it.
First-class entrepreneurs almost seem programmed to drive things forward, to raise the bar all the time, which is good, that's why they're first class. But it does come at a cost. It makes them the worst people at judging their own limits and those of their businesses. So when things go well, it's great. When things go badly, it can be tragic. Laker eventually took the big airlines to court and received a settlement which compensated creditors, passengers, and himself. He then ran a number of small airlines from his home in the Bahamas until he died in 2006. But others have picked up where he left off.
The new cut-price airline, Virgin Atlantic, has taken off.
We had the good fortune of learning from the mistakes that Sir Freddie had made. So when a few years later Virgin Atlantic set up, we survived where Sir Freddie went bust.